housekeeping news to look at, in that we have both of the BMWs, the 23 the Aston Martin Valkyrie and the number 24 BMW will have a drive-through for pit lane speeding, which were holdover penalties from the last session, and also the Jack Hawksworth Vassar Sullivan Lexus failure to follow post-session instructions. They'll get a drive-through as well, which needs to be addressed within this 90-minute session. It's quite a while after this session, Ryan, till we go qualifying. The air temperature, the track temperature, the track conditions. There's a IndyCar session to come in between what we're seeing. Do you expect to see some of the teams towards the end, maybe the last 10-15 minutes of this session, slapping on a brand new set of Michelin tyres and doing a simulation for qualifying?
I do, I absolutely do, because that will be the closest they'll be able to get to simulating what conditions will be like for qualifying. But your point is well made. It'll be a bunch of different rubber going down in that IndyCar session, which is roughly an hour and a half long in between the end of this session and qualifying later today. So the track will be quite a bit different, and both sides of the paddock, whether you're talking to the open wheel guys or the sports car guys, they all say it does complicate things. It adds an extra variable to the equation when you have different series running with different rubber and you don't quite know what to expect one session to the next, like you would on a normal IMSA weekend when all the support series, or at least nearly all of them, are all running on the Michelins. But I do think you will see that. One thing we should note as well, there was one change to the regulations coming in regarding the tires for this event. An additional set of tires was given in both the GTP and GTD classes, so 5 sets now available. Previously it had only been 4. It has come to light that in this event previously, teams were using wet weather tires in the dry to get some additional siding laps and things like that. That's really not what the wet tire is intended for. Admittedly, you never expect to use it when you come to Long Beach, but IMSA has seen that. They have changed the rules. You are now only allowed to use the wets if the session is declared wet by the race director, but to compensate, they've given both classes 1 extra set of tires compared to what we had 1 year ago.
That extra weight as well on the 2 Porsche Penske Motorsport cars might mean that the strategy that has won this race the past couple of outings, which is fill the car with VP Racing fuel at the point in the race that you can get home and then go for it, leave the Michelins on. That extra weight, 45 kilos, all right, it doesn't sound like a lot. That's not even half my weight. Although I do know some drivers who raced at probably 50, just over 50 kilos. So it's almost like having another driver in the car. That will here, with the stopping, with the turning, with the accelerating, that will affect the Michelin tyres, which is a new Michelin tyre for this year, 50% recycled, let's remind ourselves. And I'm not sure that if we go a reasonable amount of green in the first half of the race, those 2 Porsche Penske Motorsports cars will want to risk going without a tyre change. Why wouldn't you, by the way, if you've got the tyres left to use? Well, the answer is you're not allowed tyre warmers, and it can cost you anything between 4 to 6 seconds a lap on the warm-up. Well, it could have last year, but these new Michelin tyres, probably half that is what I've been hearing from the drivers and the teams. This is a very delicate balance here for what undoubtedly are the favourite team coming in here, Porsche Penske Motorsport, Ryan, as to whether they feel they can get through to the end of the race on these new Michelins, or whether they will change and take a slight performance deficit in the outlap or maybe the first couple of laps after any green flag pit stop.
Well, one other strategic wrinkle to factor in is because the race is so short, just 100 minutes, typically the pit stop, it's not going to, well, it isn't going to be a full fuel fill. So typically then it's the driver change, and if you choose to do it, a tire change, that's the time limiting factor in those pit stops. Where the no tire change has really worked in the last couple of years is a yellow has come early, teams have come into the pit lane, those that elected to only do a driver change and just a splash of fuel, didn't waste time on tires, they were able to grab track position leaving the pits and hold it, given how difficult it can be to pass here at Long Beach. And so those are all the factors that will have to be taken into consideration. One other change, though, from last year is how full course yellows are handled and when the pits will open. This year, a full course yellow deployed within the first 30 minutes of the race or within 15 minutes of any green flag restart, it will be a short full course yellow sequence, so the pits would not open. Where this is different from a year ago is, okay, if that happens one time, then the subsequent pit stop, or the subsequent yellow, if it's within that window, the pits would open. That's no longer the case. So at any point in the first 30 minutes, if there's a full course yellow, the pits will not open, and that changes some of that strategic calculus once again, because in the past, had those pits opened up, you often would have seen just about everybody come in, choose to either take two tires, no tires, do that splash of fuel, do your driver change, and then you're good to go the rest of the way. But you can't count on that now inside of the first 30 minutes.
Yeah, are we talking about GTP here in terms of the driver time? Because effectively there's no driver time. I think it's 5 minutes or something. I remember way back in the American Le Mans Series years, the open top BMWs, there was a puncture, I think, early on. They came in after 5 or 6 minutes. It looked like the day was over for them. They swapped out, and I have a feeling it was Bill Oberlin, who lives not too far away from where we're racing this weekend. He did the rest of the race and won the race, and they turned that necessity into an advantage. Well, as Ryan Marine rightly says here in the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre, that's not going to be the case this year. I'm fascinated with this. I actually I've now can't find the screen that I put the minimum drive times for the GTDs onto,
minutes.
which is slightly different. You have to remember that. Say again, sorry?
35 minutes is the minimum.
Thank you. Turn 1 has claimed another victim. It was Kevin Estre earlier on who bent the right rear suspension. This time it's the Van der Steur Racing Aston Martin number 19 that has been, well, actually into the tyre wall. I think Kevin actually hit the concrete. It was Rory Van der Steur who was in the race. Rory's caught the very edge of the tyre bales with the right front and then the left front, whereas Kevin got a wee bit further round and slapped the wall with the right rear and broke the suspension very sensibly. And Ryan picked this up at the time. Estre got off the track into one of the cut-throughs, I suspect at turn 6, turn 7. Oh, we've got a red flag.
Yeah.
Now we have got a red flag for debris.
Yep.
And now this is significant, Ryan, because you made the point earlier on, and this was important for Estre to get off the track, that he didn't cause a red flag, because we have regulations this year that are somewhat punitive, and I understand why. IMSA want people to get their full practice sessions, and they don't want people throwing cars at the scenery.
Yeah, I think it has been successful in that regard. This came online last year, where if you are adjudged to having brought out the red flag in one of the practice sessions, you lose your fastest lap in qualifying. And I think that Rory Van der Steur here is going to run afoul of that, because it was the bodywork off of his car, and it was his mistake that caused the bodywork to be loose in the first place that brought out the red flag here. So consequently, that means they're going to have to get 2 quick laps in qualifying to get any kind of representative starting position on the grid. It's been a tough weekend for them thus far. It's their first ever race here at Long Beach, the first time they've been running a full season, having run Michelin Endurance Cup schedules in the past, and they were down in 14th in practice 1, and this is another setback in addition to the time now that they'll need to spend repairing the car. That will cost them track time, but also puts them on the back foot for qualifying, as you point out.
And track position, the point you rightly made earlier on, Ryan, probably more important here than anywhere else, particularly if the race, and it's only a 100-minute race, it's our shortest race distance of the year. If the race runs green, then track position, it just means you have to, if you have a bad track position, you have to overtake more people. You might say to yourself, well, hang on, I was listening to you guys talking earlier on today, and Estre clouted the wall at turn 1. He broke the suspension and he didn't even get back to the pits. Rory van der Stur's driven away. Why doesn't Estre get the same penalty? Well, Estre got the car to a place of safety. There was no debris on the track, and therefore he didn't cause a red flag. You cause a red flag, you are inconveniencing all of the other competitors. They are losing time out on the circuit, and therefore you're going to get a penalty for it, and the penalty is you lose your fastest lap in qualifying. Should say, by the way, as an adjunct to that, if you, and we're already back to green, the AMR safety crew doing their best work as ever and clearing up that debris at a couple of spots on the track. If you stop the clock, stop the action, because the clock probably won't stop, in qualifying, you lose 2 fast laps. And that, in a 15-minute qualifying, Ryan, that's pretty difficult to come back to, even if you haven't really damaged your car.
I'd go as far as to say impossible to come back from losing both of those laps. At least you've got a fighting chance if you only lose 1, but it's going to be a busy session in qualifying. Not much time, as you point out, and this is also the biggest field that we've had at Long Beach in quite some time. 28 cars on the entry list. That's the largest field since 2017. A good chunk of those are in GTD specifically. Now, of course, prototypes and GTs don't qualify together, but thinking about GTD, this could be a difficult track to try and find 1 clear lap, and now for Van der Stur Racing, they're going to need to look for 2, and that just adds to the complication.
Yeah, spot on. Absolutely spot on. We've got an hour and 17 minutes or thereabouts still to run. If you are just joining us, a very warm welcome. Late evening in Europe, coming up to 25 minutes past 9 in the UK, 25 minutes past 10 on a fast Friday in Europe. Take 9 hours off that for Pacific time, and we are in absolutely beautiful conditions. Track temperatures, now I have got them, and our probes have started measuring 46 Celsius. That's 115 Fahrenheit. Now, the Michelin engineers will start to get interested in this when we get closer to 50 Celsius, which is just over 120, or getting on for that at least. These are city streets, and therefore the surface of the circuit, I won't call it a track, a circuit, let's say, react differently to bright sunshine. And we have bright sunshine at the moment, with the air temperature a relatively temperate level at the moment at 70 Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius. But it is that solar gain, it's that energy that the bright sunlight at this time of the year, with barely any shadow from the cars as the sun is pretty much directly overhead, Ryan, that on the circuit right now is going to spike that circuit temperature, and that is when the Michelin tyre engineers get interested.
It is noticeably warmer than session 1 earlier today, and yeah, you pointed out that it was uncharacteristically cloudy during that first session earlier today. Those clouds are gone. Can't see them anywhere out the window at this point, and this has been the case for several hours now. So you're exactly right. The track is just soaking up all those rays from the sun. The heat is permeating into the pavement and absolutely skyrocketing here. So that, coupled with all the different rubber that's been laid down since the first session, and I suspect these drivers will feel like this is almost a different track surface that they're driving on top of, because so much has changed since practice 1 already today.
Well, Kevin Estre clipped the wall in turn 1 and did some damage to the right rear suspension. The Porsche Penske Motorsport team somewhat typically went to work on that, and you wonder, don't you, with such a short amount of time, are they going to get the car sorted out? Is it going to be perfectly tracking straight? Have they got time to put it back on the flat patch? Well, notwithstanding all of those questions, the answer is a resounding yes, as he's just put in last time around a 1 minute 12.742, and that is the fastest lap we've seen so far by a wee margin. That's the first 62-second lap we've seen, sub 63-second lap we've seen. A 13.0 by Tom Blomqvist, and by the way, both Kevin and Tom in the pit lane at the moment. That would have been quick enough to be quickest in that first session, and he finds himself 0.3 away from the best time. Now, given that half a second separated the top, well, in fact, the whole GTP field, Ryan, we are seeing some major gains being made here, with teams either using some more Michelin tyres, that heat on the circuit, and the point that you made earlier on about the evolution of the circuit through this weekend, it is probably as great as at any circuit that we are this weekend. We're going to see some fast times in this session.
I think so too. We're already seeing times that are inching closer to the race lap record. We're not a far cry away now, just about a second or so from the race lap record, which has stood for a couple of years. Interestingly held by BMW and Connor De Filippi. They have the race lap record here at Long Beach. One thing I thought was interesting when I had a chance to walk around and talk to drivers in both the IndyCar and the IMSA paddocks, one thing that I hadn't considered before is normally we talk about, okay, do the different tire manufacturers, does their rubber on the track play nice with one another? And that's especially true, I gather, at a more permanent facility versus a street course like here at Long Beach. What a couple drivers told me was, at this point, because of the track evolution and because these are city streets and not a permanent racetrack, actually any race rubber that goes down is good for grip, at least for a while. It reaches a tipping point. But at the early stages, they're just happy that other cars are out there cleaning the track, getting the dust and debris off, putting some rubber down, and not worrying whether or not the two compounds play together. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because normally you'll hear them saying, oh, we went out after such and such, and that's a different tyre manufacturer, and. Yeah, very good. Very good indeed. Lauren Heinrich has gone back to the top with JDC Miller Motorsports. This is the lightest of the 963 Porsches by some 100 pounds, 45 kilos. A 1:12.728 is 0.014 ahead of Kevin Estre, who's just gone back out again in the works, the Porsche. When we say works, we mean factory, manufacturer blessed cars, the Porsche Penske Motorsport machine. But they have both just been usurped by Nick Yellerly in the new livery for this weekend for the number 93, the Acura ARX 06. is Shank Racing, of course, but it's in a blue and orange livery this weekend. And the top 3 now are within 3/4, make that the top 4 now, are within 3/4 of a tenth of a second. Nick Yellerly, Lauren Heinrich, Kevin Estre, Marco Wittmann for Acura, Porsche and BMW, incredibly close over a 62-second lap. That, Ryan, is literally the blink of an eye. That is, I mean, you can't, it's difficult to miss shifts nowadays. I don't even know where, let's say, Marco Wittmann, who's just come into the pits, so when he comes in and finds out that he is quicker than anybody went this morning by half a second, and they say, oh, you're 0.079 of a second back from the best time. Marcos, where does he find that? Where does I lose 0.079? Did I sneeze? Did I lean the wrong way into a corner? I'm not entirely certain.
Too big of a breakfast, maybe.
Yeah, one extra donut with the coffee in between sessions could be that point. If we go down to 0.4 of a second, that's the top 8, and we're still with a couple of drivers, in particularly the two Cadillacs, actually, the Wayne Taylor number 40 and the Fred Vesti number 31, the Whelen Cadillac, running in the darker colours again this weekend, yet to put in what we might think is a competitive time, as Lauren Heinrich goes back to the top by 24 1,000ths of a second, but still the top 4 are within 0.183 of a second, the top 5 within 0.268 of a second. No, man, that the top 6. Incredible, a 1:12.6. No, stop, hang on. They're doing their quali sims now, aren't they? Nick Yellerly's gone straight back to the top with a 12.610. So he's now half a tenth ahead of Lauren Heinrich. We'll get to the GTDs in a moment, Ryan. But if this is what we're going to see, if this is a starter portion of qualifying, my goodness, what a 15 minutes we're going to have later on today.
Think about the pressure that's on these drivers to be not just inch perfect, but millimeter perfect. We're talking about such fine margins. Something that wouldn't maybe normally be considered even that big of a mistake or an error, just the slightest misplacement of the car, maybe not shifting the gear at the ideal point in the torque band, whatever. Little things like that. I mean, as close as this field is right now, that could be 3-4 positions just making one ill-considered shift. That's a ton of pressure to go into the situation, thinking about knowing that you have to be 100% perfect, 100% on your game, or else you could find yourself well down the order at a racetrack where, as we've talked about, it's very difficult to recover from a poor qualifying effort.
Let's talk about the GTDs, the cars that look much more like, well, if we had the wherewithal, we would pop down to our local Lamborghini, Porsche, Aston Martin, BMW, Ford. I'm driving a Mustang Dark Horse this weekend with the 6-speed Tramec gearbox, the limited slip diff, and the Multimatic, very clever Multimatic race suspension, which is the basis for the Mustang Challenge car that we have in IMSA, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. We'll have a full real-world road test to come. Those times are quicker than this morning. Frankie Montecalvo is reprising his role from this morning, where for the very longest time he was quickest in the Lexus RCF GT3. He's down to an 18.6 here in this session. The car that was closest to him for the longest time this morning was the Windward Mercedes. That is second. It is the Inception Ferrari now that's third, the number 70 bright yellow car, and Vassar Sullivan's second car. And there are two Vassar Sullivans. Lexus in the GTD, the number 89 of Frankie Montecalvo. They've shuffled their drivers a little bit, Ryan, to give them 2 entries. Effectively, that chassis is what would normally run in GTD Pro, but it's the same performance potential, it's the same car. It requires them to slightly change their driver lineup.
Right, so Jack Hawksworth, who has been this year back in the GTD Pro side of things, he slides over to make an appearance in GTD, a one-off appearance for the year, and joins up with Montecalvo, who's been in the sister car through the first 2 races of the season. He'll be with them for all of the Michelin Endurance Cup rounds, but that left him available to run here in Long Beach, and so they thought, all right, let's run a second car, increase our chances, and we can keep Frankie, who's in a good rhythm. He's been with the team through both races this year, obviously right on the pace. This is a home race for him, and he's been incredibly quick, as you've chronicled. And then they've still got Jack Hawksworth waiting in the wings. Sets them up really nicely on a racetrack where historically Vassar Sullivan has been very, very strong. 2 wins and 7 podiums since 2022, and also the last 2 GTD class poles for Vassar Sullivan here at Long Beach.
The address, if you want to get in touch with us on the socials, use X, and it is at IMSA Radio. Nice and easy to remember. We'll keep an eye on that. We talked about Kevin Estre earlier on. Colleagues, hard-working colleagues at Sportscar 365, spreading themselves between Long Beach and the first round of the first round of the WEC, the World Endurance Championship at Imola, the Creventic event at Spa this weekend, which saw a McLaren on pole position earlier on. And well done to Johnny Palmer and Simon Hill, with Carla and Sarah in the pits. So we've just had the Porsche number 7 running on, Porsche Penske Motorsport number 7 running on for Julian Andlauer, has sorted that out and is pointing back in the right direction. Talking about Kevin Estre, story breaking on sportscar365.com. Kevin Estre could well be coming back to the FIA in 2027, but not with Porsche. But, and I'm kind of using soccer terms here, but going out on loan to Toyota. Incredible storyline that's being picked up by John de Geese and the rest of the team, coming from their reporting both here at Long Beach and at Imola. Sportscar365.com if you want to get ahead of that. That is absolutely incredible if he goes out on loan to Toyota. Not necessarily signing for Toyota, but going out on loan for Toyota. As I say, it rather sounds more like a soccer story at this stage of the Premiership and Football League season. And that is that's a story we'll keep an eye on over the next days and weeks. And it's Kevin Estre who has the fastest time here, so putting himself in the shop window. I realise this is speculation, Ryan, but if that is true and that's a loan, what does that say about Porsche Penske Motorsport potentially coming back to the FIA WEC and therefore to Le Mans, a race that Roger Penske's never won, in the near rather than far distant future? Because quite clearly, if they didn't think they had work for Kevin, they would let him go, but they want to keep him gainfully employed.
Well, my understanding is his contract extends through 2027, so that's the workaround there. And exactly how all of this will work out, or if it won't, we don't know. That all is happening behind closed doors. I know John talked to Kevin here earlier today, and he told me silly season has started early. This is not the only story that's percolating behind the scenes. So if you're interested in where your favorite driver might be driving or who your favorite brand might have behind the wheel of one of their cars next year, you're going to want to keep an eye out on all the reporting that's coming in, because it sounds like there could be quite a bit of movement in play.
With so much going on this weekend, there's an awful lot to get through. We've been gathering a lot of information with the guys from Sportscar 365. If you go to radio-show.co.uk, you'll see there's a lot of interviews and content with the team principals, with some of the drivers from the WEC at Imola. We'll keep you up to date with what's going on in the world of sports car racing, with an hour left to go in this second and final free practice session at IMSA Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, whether you're at the track or further afield, be good to hear where you're listening in from in this early coverage. To give you a VP in-session update, let's start with the GTs this time. Just as a point of difference, it is Vassar Sullivan and the RCF number 89. That car has clocked a 1:18.654. Phil Ellis has just come to the pits for Winwood Racing with a 1:19.1, so nearly half a second. That's a huge gap. That would have been half the field in the early session this morning. Then Inception, Frank Scharndorf just taking that car back out. That's the best of the bronze class runners as well. Just 0.072 of a second further back. Then we have Aaron Tielitz for Lexus. Again, fractions of a second. Then a 10th for Ori Fadani and 13 Autosports Corvette. And the top six made up by Turner and the BMW M4 GT3, the number 96 car. And all told, that top six is obviously a little bit of mental arithmetic here, is almost spot on a second. And most of that is between first and second. In GTP, where it was ridiculously close this morning, less than 0.7 of a percent over the whole field. Well, we're at it again. Kevin Estra back in the pit lane has 0.042 of an advantage over Renger van der Zande now in second for the number 93 Acura. Then it's 0.049 back to JDC Miller and Lauren Heinrich. It's not a bit of an incident actually for the Inception app. Across the blend line with the right side Michelins on the exit from the pits, coming down the front straight for Fred Scharndorf. You're not allowed to breach that bright red line on the way out of the pit lane with the Michelin tyres, or indeed as you're coming down the front straight into turn one. That will be being looked at in the moment. He might get a rap on the knuckles for that. He's doing it again actually the next lap around, and that was more significant because one of the Porsche Penske Motorsport machines was just coming out of the pit lane. Let's carry on with our VP update. So Porsche Penske number 6, that's Lawrence Vantor that was coming out the pits right in front of Fred Scharndorf. Then the Acura, then JDC Miller, Lauren Heinrich, then BMW M Team WRT, that's Philippe Eng now behind the wheel of the number 4. We're still not 0.2 of a second, by the way, between those top 4. Then another 0.08 of a second back to Julian Andler. And the second of the EPM cars in Martin Heart of Racing Valkyrie. They'll be delighted with that. The big V12 normally aspirated engine, and of course the only car that was built to the ACO FIA WEC regulations that is in the championship. So they're sitting in 6th at the moment, barely 0.4 of a second away. So very tight indeed. There's still 55 minutes to go. It's Porsche, Acura, Porsche, BMW, Porsche and Aston Martin at the front of the field, and that's your VP in session update. Ryan Marine, your thoughts with 55 to go?
Well, it's good to see the BMW take that step forward at Philippang up in 4th. You were asking me right off the top, should they have been concerned that they were down in 10th and 11th? And the thought was, you don't have to find that much to be competitive. Now, everybody has found a lot in this session as the track has evolved and also teams have made changes. But the BMW, at least from that side of the paddock, that side of the pit lane, they've been able to take that big jump up to 4th. I'd also like to point out what a good effort this is still from the Heart of Racing and their Aston. We talked about this at Sebring, where they ended up qualifying quite a ways down the order, but we compared their gap in qualifying this year compared to their gap to the top in their first year 1 year ago. And even though they lined up, I think, in the same position, their gap to the front was much, much smaller. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see as the year progresses. They're back at these tracks now for a second time. The organizers know how to BOP an LMH car a little bit better than they did this time last year. And they're right there in the thick of things, not far at all away from the fastest times in the session.
Well, to your point, and we've got Aaron Taylitz, by the way, just doing the 3-point turn in the runoff at turn number 1 in the Sealmaster number 12. That's the Lexus RCF, just being passed by one of the Penske Porsches. And the problem is that the Penske Porsche actually, bizarrely, brakes earlier than the GTD car. And I think that rather caught Aaron out a wee bit, just how early that GTP car did brake. And rather than run into the back of him, he ran to the right-hand side. He did blow that thick bright red line. I don't think he'll get any sanction for that, as he was avoiding the incident. It's a hard lesson sometimes for the prototype drivers to learn, that you can't just pass one of the GT3 cars and then pull straight in front and throw the brakes on, because those prototypes, that Porsche is 1,100 kilos this weekend. It's the heaviest that any GTP or Le Mans hybrid has been in the current rule set, due to the changes in the minimum weights for those cars this weekend, for those Porsche Penske Motorsport 963s. They don't have any assistance electronically for braking. You rely on the aerodynamics and the driver's left foot hitting the brake pedal as hard as possible. Yes, they do left foot brake, these cars, and they are feeling the amount of grip and retardation that they can get from the Michelin tyres and the braking and the downforce. The assistance of the very sophisticated race-tuned ABS and the Michelin tyres on the GTDs mean that even in the dry, they are braking a little bit later. They're not going as quickly. Their terminal speed isn't as quick, and they are quite heavy, but not that much heavier than a GTP, as we've got two of the GTs off, the Heart of Racing Aston number 27 and the AF Corsa 34. Two different parts of the track. The Ferrari, the blue, very nice metallic blue Ferrari, sorry, that's the Conquest car, isn't it? The 34 is at turn 1. And who's that on board that car? That's Manny Franco and Spencer Pumpelly. Well, write that one down in your diary, because Spencer Pumpelly running long at turn 9. Again, that bump in the braking area, I think, maybe playing a part there. Manny came in at a weird angle at turn 1 and decided to try and do an early turnaround. He hasn't managed to get that done now. Yes, he has, and he's off and running. Just going back though, Ryan, to that issue that we had a moment or two ago for the Lexus. There's a responsibility, is there not, with the prototype drivers to remember that when they go past particularly down into turn 1, a GTD car and pull in front of them, that they're taking air from the GTD, and the GTD has still got to stop before the corner.
Sure, yeah, that's part of knowing how the two classes interact, and you're exactly right, especially early in runs and on cold tires for the GTP cars. Those brake zones are pretty long, even relative to a bigger, heavier GT car, and that might have had a factor in that situation just a few moments ago too, for sure. The thing that is interesting to me is so many of the GTP drivers actually came through GT racing first before they became prototype drivers, so they should have an appreciation for that, and yet I guess you forget sometimes when you get strapped in your race car and you're focused on your business and maybe not thinking about your own previous experiences, when you might have had a few choice words to say about the prototype driver had the roles been reversed.
Hello to Jam, who's at home listening to practice 2, hoping that the Inception Racing boys go well. Just say at home where. Hello, Jam. Drop us another note on that. Hello to Luke Crane, who's tuned in and listening in to us. Good to have your company at IMSA Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, good to have your company. Lawrence Vantors now taking over the fastest car in this session, barely, 0.042 of a second. Kevin Estra's time. Renger van der Zande now behind the wheel of the 93. The orange and blue car, orange, blue and white car this weekend. And Lauren Heinrich behind the dark grey JDC Miller Motorsports machine. One of a number of cars, 2 of those, in fact actually all 3 of those, a number of cars this weekend running different liveries to either reflect their partners or to highlight various bits and people. Oh, now off at turn 8 and into the tyre barriers quite hard, I think is an Acura. Yes, it is an Acura, and this is the darker coloured car, hands off the wheel from the driver, so we're going to get a red flag here, and this then is very significant for Colin Brown in the number 60 car. A very unusual mistake in one for 1 point, Ryan Marine, but this will have implications in the final IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship session of Fast Friday, being qualifying for that number 60 car.
Right, as we've talked about, that means the loss to the fastest lap in that qualifying session. That is, as you say, very uncharacteristic from Colin. Maybe there was more to the story that we haven't seen, but and it is worth noting that if there is more to this story and there is another car involved, then race control would take that into account before handing out the penalties willy-nilly. But that said, this is a big setback, if for no other reason than the track time lost, and it looks like Colin's pretty well wedged in there, and there is certainly no one around him, as we just saw the video, the replay, right into that tire bundle. And it's a good thing too, because it looked like he was going pretty quickly, and that tire bundle did exactly what it was put there to do.
Oh, yeah.
That makes you wonder if there was something wrong with the car.
That corner, turn 8, has... Yes. Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. That corner has been not exactly opened up, but the apex of that corner has been pushed back a little bit so that the sight lines are better. The curbs are pretty much where they have been in previous years. A couple of years ago, it was just opened up so you could throw... Did he clip the wall on the inside? I don't think he did. But there was an odd movement from the number 60 Acura. It's been pulled out by one of our new for 2026 Ford F-150 Raptors, which Ford and Ford Racing have equipped our AMR safety team. And by the way, yes, please. We don't get those in the UK. They're a little bit big for our UK roads, but there is a Ranger Raptor over in the UK. I've been talking to the guys from Ford a lot recently about their street car range, and the more I hear about that F-150 Raptor and 700 horsepower, the more I think, as Tom Nachu might have said, God rest his soul, do I need a car like that? Probably not. But do I want a car like that? Absolutely. That car now pulled out of the tyre barriers. There's damage to the left front. I think that's an extra tyre bundle that's been stuck on there from previous years. It's only half the width of the other tyres, but it's, I think, saved that number 60 Acura from worse damage that Colin's just been rather ruefully looking at before he gets into the Porsche Cayenne rapid response vehicle. We've seen some big hits down at that point at turn 8 as you're coming off Pine and back onto Seaside down through the years, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. I agree completely that tire bundle saved them a heck of a lot of damage. It's still significant damage to the left front quarter of that car. I think Colin initially was hoping to drive the car back, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. They'll have to lift it up on top of a flatbed and take the car back, and I'm not sure that we'll see more of it in the remaining 43 minutes, 45 seconds here in this practice. No. But this is why you run multiple cars, right, John? I mean, the good news is the sister car is second fastest and can still go out, gather data, go through the run plan, and then give that to this car before qualifying in the debrief. But it's going to be a tough one to overcome for a couple of reasons.
Well, there's an added complication here, is that you could take that car on the rollback back to the pit lane and dump it back in the pit lane. If you could, do that, then they might be able to fix that suspension damage. If you take it back to the paddock, where the IMSA paddock is, you can't, while the session is live, get the cars from there back to the pit lane to resume, because they're on the wrong part of the track, and you would have to come across the track or use part of the track, and that simply isn't allowed. So they're going to lose this last 43 odd minutes. It's a really good recovery orchestrated by the EMR safety team and track services. We got the flatbed hasn't rolled back the rear part of the truck. It's been lifted on. The number 60 Acura been lifted on by the cranes, one of the cranes, the mobile cranes that are stationed around the circuit, as is the wont for street circuits, and that's been a very efficient recovery. So double whammy here, or possibly a triple whammy actually, you might say. A damaged car, I think that's probably the least of their issues, is the damage. They'll fix that long before it needs to come back out again, Ryan. They are losing the better part of 3/4 of an hour of track time on a weekend where track time is at a premium. And the third part of the triple whammy is that they'll lose their fastest lap in qualifying.
Right. Yeah, good question. Which is the most punishing? I think you're right that the damage is what they can work through. I think it is probably losing the fast lap that's the most damaging. Again, it would be one thing if that was ahead of a 24-hour race or a 12-hour race, but this is a 100-minute sprint on a street course where, as I said earlier, the last 5 years, 12 of the 13 class winners have come from the top couple of positions, top 3 positions. So if you're not qualifying up at the front, chances are you're not going to have the result that you're looking for. There's just not enough time. The track is difficult to pass on because it's narrow. It's just a difficult place, as we've seen over the years. So I think that is probably the most painful part of this equation, the fact that they lose that fast lap and will have to get the car turned around and ready to put in 2 quick ones.
The clock does not stop running in the practice session, so it continues. As I say, a very efficient recovery. It gives me an opportunity to say hello to Sandra, who is following IMSA practice sessions from Toronto in California. Obviously, I'm sure we'll be looking at the FAF Racing Temerario in bright blue this weekend. Jam, by the way, has replied, North Carolina is home and ready to watch qualifying later on with a cold one. That's a great idea. For obvious reasons, our Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre does not have a wet bar and a fridge, but maybe it's something that we can work on, particularly when we don't have to drive afterwards. Or maybe we could do some of the alcohol-free stuff. There's a couple of very good versions of that. Thank you very much for letting us know. Anyone else who's listening in, particularly for the first time, if you've got any questions, add it into... let us know if you're listening in for the first time and where you are listening. We've got qualifying coming up later on today, and that will be 2 15-minute sessions. Looking forward to that as ever. The fast, furious sessions that we have here on the streets of Long Beach are always a precursor, as Ryan's mentioned, to the potential results. We'll take the GTDs out there first and then bring out the full prototypes, the thoroughbred cars for the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach when we set the 2 grids later on this Fast Friday. It's our final action of the Fast Friday. And then, of course, the full 100-minute race live in sound and vision for those of you outside of the US. Qualifying, by the way, is always available to everybody around the world, even those of you here in the US. There's no geo-block on that via the player at IMSARadio.com. I know it says IMSA Radio, but we have a video player on there that we're not going to change the URL now. It's IMSA Radio. But if you go to the top left-hand side and hit the menu button, the first thing that's up there is the live video. Also, of course, on YouTube, if you want to put that on your smart TV at home or in the den or wherever you're watching us, if you can squeeze the TV away from the family, then get onto YouTube, and the official IMSA YouTube channel will bring you all of the action for qualifying as the green flag goes back to green again at 37.5 minutes. So you can work out how much time we've lost there, getting on for 10 minutes there. If you're in the US, or at least if you have a US IP address, then that isn't available for you for the race, although we will be on Sirius XM, commercial free, for our Michelin Countdown to Green, and then the whole 100-minute race, and then we've got Michelin Post-Race Tech. But if you don't have a US IP, then you can still watch on YouTube, and that 100-minute race is Saturday in the early afternoon, 1 o'clock at Pacific time, of course, so work that out. You go to IMSARadio.com, you can see the time zone see the starting time in your own time zone. 36.5 to go, and those that haven't done a qualifying simulation in the early part of the race probably have about, 20 minutes or so, Ryan, to think about doing that, and what tyres maybe they're going to scrub in and take the shine off, and what else they've got to get through on their to-do list between now and the checkered flag.
Well, that long red flag, I imagine that changed a lot of teams' run plans. You know, you go into the session saying, okay, we have 90 minutes to work with, which coincidentally, I always am amazed by this. The practice session here is longer than the race. A 90-minute practice session, and it's an 80-minute race or 100-minute race. So I guess it's not quite longer, but basically as long. Anyway, all this to say, or no, I take that back. It is longer. Don't make me do math. That's a terrible idea. All right, back to what I was trying to point out. You go into the session with an idea of what you're trying to accomplish, and you know how much time you have to do it, but then that red flag, maybe it comes in the middle of when you were trying to do a long run, or maybe it comes as you were just starting your quali sim, and it can throw everything for a loop. And that's why that rule exists, as we talked about earlier, where you do lose that qualifying lap. It's to try and cut down on the red flags, because it doesn't just affect the car that's in the wall. It has the ability to affect everybody in the paddock.
Fred Schandorf trying to get out of the pit lane, and the number 70 Inception bright yellow Ferrari has ground to a halt. He's done the three-fingered salute, the Control-Alt-Delete, and restarted that car very sensibly with a car that clearly he wasn't happy with. He didn't take it out of the pit lane there, Ryan, for exactly what you're saying. Stopped the car in the pit lane, pulled it over as hard to the left-hand side wall as he could so he wasn't impeding anybody else. Obviously talking to the team on the ship-to-shore radio, and they've talked him through rebooting that car. And I say that absolutely honestly. I think it was at the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona this year, when we were talking about one of the WRT BMW prototypes, and asked them what the problem been with the car, and they said it was a software issue. And the only thing I know about being a software engineer is to tell people to turn it off and leave it for 30 seconds and turn it back on again, which seems to have worked there for Fred Schandorf at least.
It's a good thing we've got Arjuna to help us out with our software issues, right?
Yeah, indeed, sure. Arjuna and Ryan will be calling the action for you in the two IMSA sanctioned Porsche Carrera Cup North America races on the streets of Long Beach this weekend. Thoroughly looking forward to that. Tom Sargent back after a little sabbatical and qualifying very well, front row for the first race for GMG. Very interested to see. It's a new tyre for him and a new car. We had a sneaking suspicion he wouldn't take too much time to get used to it, and so it seemed to be. That coming on tomorrow and Sunday, the second race for that. If you're an endurance racing fan, we've got live radio coverage for you of free practice 3 qualifying and the whole of the 6 hours of Imola this weekend over on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network of channels. And if you want to watch a bit more as well, we've got the 12 hours of Spa split into two almost halves, Saturday and Sunday. McLaren on pole position for that, GT3 being the top class there, Saturday and Sunday. And of course Max Verstappen, with no F1 commitments this weekend, will be battling it out in 2 4-hour races with his very accomplished teammates, Winwood Racing, running the cars, as they are running at the moment in third place here with Russell Ward in the number 57 at the Nürburgring on the Nordschleife. Not the full Grand Prix track, and the Nordschleife, the sprint version, as they say, of the track, is the final 2 races before the ADAC Ravenel 24 hours of the Nürburgring next month, which we'll also have for you in sound and vision. That's our fantastic 4 of sports car and endurance racing for you this weekend across Radio Show Limited, IMSA Radio and the full network. Enough to keep you interested, and that's before we talk about supercars and World Superbikes and everything else that's going on. Busy weekend of motorsport. Just coming down to half an hour to go and people getting back up to speed. I think you made a very good point there, Ryan, about people interrupted in a long run. We've got a change of driver at the top of the field, which is Lawrence Vanto has jumped into the car that Kevin Estre put the fastest time in, and I suspect that he's gone out on the tyres that he had on before that red flag. See above comment for Renger van der Zande, Jack Aiken and possibly Tymon van der Helm as well. They need some data for the race tomorrow.
They do, that's right, so they'll go out and try and gather that here. I think Aitken could be on a new set because he just did his best lap the last time, and he just did his best first sector on this lap here now too. So let's keep an eye on that car. That's really climbing the order for the first time. Really haven't seen a Cadillac factor in at the front through nearly 2 practice sessions.
Just had a little incident, or an incident, how can I say incident-ette, because it was very small for BMW number 24. Gets pointing back in the right direction very quickly. Just a reminder, if you're just joining us, if you're not hearing us talking about the number 60 Acura circulating, that's because it's not. Colin Brown with a very uncharacteristic mistake, possibly. I'm saying possibly. It looked an odd one down at turn 8. You come down the hill at Pine, turn left onto Seaside, and he's a bit downhill and off camber. But something as Colin turned in and headed to the red, white and blue curbs on the apex just didn't look right. Either he clipped the wall on the right hand side, or something wasn't right with the car and it didn't slow down because he wasn't on the right trajectory, the right racing line through the corner. And that's not something I can honestly say I've said an awful lot about Colin Brown when there haven't been other factors involved. So that car will take no further part. It still sits in 9th position. It's Porsche Penske 963 number 6 from Acura ARX number 93. Less than half a tenth of a second between those two. And then just on a tenth of a tenth, so 100th of a second between Renger in the Acura and Cadillac Whelen and that Jack Aitken time. So close. How about under a tenth for the top 4 cars, being 2 Porsches, an Acura and a Cadillac? Yes, it's a short circuit. Yes, it's a relatively low lap time at 62 seconds. But we are talking here absolute fractions, Ryan. Never mind the 1%. We are talking about the half of 1% to get things right, to make a difference, and qualifying later on. Tune in, don't miss it. It's going to be a cracker, isn't it?
Oh, it's so close through the first 2 practices here. Expect that to carry over. And when you talk about the little things that make a difference, just a moment ago, Robert Wickens went to 3rd quickest in GTD. We had an onboard shot of him a moment ago, and he's in the pit lane now, and they're doing a practice driver change. Remember, this is his first race of any kind since the VIR race last August, I think it would have been. That's quite a while. And here in particular, at Long Beach, we talked about this a little bit earlier when we talked about strategy. Oftentimes it is having a clean driver exchange in your pit stop that can make all the difference in the race. And Robert has, and this team has, an extra hurdle that they need to clear because they have to have somebody actually carry Robert from the car, get him out of the seat, and carry him to the pit wall. By the end of last year, they had it down to a science where it took them about 16 seconds. They weren't losing any time on the driver change to anybody else. But this is where that really gets put to the test, and I think it's very prudent for DXDT to do a couple of these practice driver changes here in a hot pit lane, the closest they're going to get to race conditions tomorrow, which, I mean, the car is quick enough. There's no doubt they can contend for a podium or more, and it might come down to executing that pit stop and that driver change that could differentiate whether or not they have a chance to win or get up on the podium.
It's Ryan Marine with me, John Hindhoff, in the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre for WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Free practice 2 still to come, qualifying and set the grid for the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach at IMSA Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, please do. Many of you have. Loving the comments. Thank you very much indeed. You're all very, very kind. Now, what's been going on with Heart Racing number 23 coming through turn 5 a moment or 2 ago, right in behind, and in fact going down the inside into turn 6 of the BMW number 24, was it? Yes, it was. No contact there between the Valkyrie of Roman De Angelis and Dries Van Toor in 8th and 10th respectively. Really good showing by the autoracing team. Big weekend for them, logistically immense. Ian James over in Imola in Italy for WEC, driving one of the GT cars, of which they are running 2 in WEC, plus 2 Valkyries, plus the Valkyrie and the GT car here. And Ian James works it all out in his head, apparently. He's just incredibly laid back. Had a good chat with him earlier on in the week at the prologue on, when was that now? This week's been all over the place. Tuesday. That's when he told me about the twin supercharged Vantage V12 drift car that they have here at Long Beach, which sounds brilliant. A really big, no, huge, massive, immense, gargantuan undertaking from a privately funded team to take on 2 world-class championships with 6 cars spread between, actually 7 normally, spread between them. We've only got one of the class of GTDs here. And fair play to Ian, to Alex Riberas, and to the Newell family as well, who have supported this venture so admirably. And let's not lose sight, we have to keep mentioning this really, Ryan, that the heart of racing is also raising, it's well over $12 million, I think now it's raised for the Seattle Children's Hospital cardiac division. With everything that they've done in all kinds of motorsport worldwide. They even were doing it during COVID when some of their team got stuck down on the other side of the world in New Zealand. So they decided to do some racing and some drift competition down there as well. It's about raising awareness and raising money, and that has turned into a literally world-class racing team that is doing things that actually some factory teams wouldn't even want to try, running 7 cars in 2 different classes across IMSA and the WEC.
Oh, there have been teams that have turned down, I mean, well, let's use Action Express as an example. They could have gone to run at Le Mans, but decided they wanted to focus on their one car at IMSA, and I think we all applauded them for saying, hey, look, they've maybe been on the back foot a little bit. They need to put their focus where they think it's most valuable. But that's a team that runs one car and one championship, and somehow this little privateer team isn't so little anymore and has this sprawling empire across the world, and maybe the iconic sports car of 2026 in the Valkyrie as well. I mean, everybody loves this thing. It's stuck in the runoff at the moment, unfortunately, but doesn't look like it hit anything. Nevertheless, yes, I totally agree. They deserve all the plaudits for the ambition as well as the execution. It's one thing to be ambitious, but not have the wherewithal to back it up. That's not been the case. They've operated at a really high level from day one, and even as they've taken on more and more challenges, they've only risen to the occasion.
Roman De Angelis doing the Austin Powers, shuffling backwards and forwards in a beautiful blue and yellow striped Heart of Racing Valkyrie. They've gone about the design of this car, the fundamentals of this car completely differently from any of the other manufacturers, working with Aston Martin Racing obviously, and using the Aston Martin Valkyrie track car as a base. There is an Aston Martin Valkyrie road car, we should remember, but the major difference is that their rear wing on this Valkyrie, on the Heart Racing Valkyrie, is fixed. There is no aerodynamic adjustment on the rear wing. Now, you are listening to me now and going, what are you talking about, Hindhoff? All racing cars, and in fact even some high-end street cars, have adjustable aerodynamics on the rear wing. No, it doesn't, because the regulations stipulate you can only have one tunable, i.e. movable, aerodynamic device on the car. And autoracing and Aston Martin have determined that the best place to have it on the Valkyrie is at the front end. So their underbody aerodynamics at the front end, effectively their front wing, is where the tuning, the aerodynamic tuning, is applied. The rear wing is fixed. There's no little holes on the wing end plates to move things around. So the only thing that can affect that, and they do affect that, but they can't do it by moving the planes of those aerodynamic surfaces on the rear wing. So how do they do it? Well, they do it by changing the attitude of the car to the road, the rake, so they can lift or drop the front end or lift or drop the rear end. And the way that the front end and the rear end are set and the proportions of them gives the car a different angle to the air passing over it. So clearly, if you drop the front end right down and crank the rear end back up again, you are moving that rear wing more up into the airflow. If you drop the rear end all the way down, you are taking it out of the airflow. Now, you can balance that with what's going on at the front end with that movable and tunable aerodynamic plane, but that is very different from the rest of the cars on the grid. I think it's very brave of them. It gives the car a little different look around the front and the rear end. If you get a chance, look under the back. There is the shape of a bat underneath the rear end. That is the diffuser underneath the back of the car, and it looks just like a bat, a Bruce Wayne's racing car, if you will. That is part of this solution. It's a great way to go racing. They've put the biggest engine of anybody in there. It's a V12, normally aspirated, and it sounds, from a distance, it sounds incredible. Ryan, you've been in the pits when these things have gone rattling past you, and they are absolutely sonorous, aren't they? They scream.
It's the best. It really is. It's great because it stands out. The soundtrack before the Valkyrie was still fantastic at the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, but then you add it, and the fact that there's just the one, and you can almost set your watch to it, right? Every couple of minutes, you'll get to hear that sound again. Okay, everybody else must have done about another lap now, too. It's so much fun to be up close and personal, as so many of these race fans here on site today at Long Beach are, and I should point out, it's amazing to see a Friday crowd this busy. I talked to a couple of folks in the paddock about that on my way up to the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Center here, and Steven Simpson, former JDC Miller driver, now a team owner in Michelin Pilot Challenge, bumped into him, and he was saying, I have never seen a Friday crowd this big, and he had a big smile on his face and said, it makes me kind of wish I was still in one of the cars.
16 and a half minutes to go, just over, and I think we're getting some more qualifying runs here in terms of the simulations. Jack Aiken, you said watch out for him. He went to the top with a 12.330, and now Dries Vanthoor has gone to the top with a 12.284. Dries, who was the qualifying Meister in the early part of last season for BMW Team WRT in the M Hybrid V8. Hello to those teams who are watching, or at least listening to us over in Imola for the FIA World Endurance Championship. I know that Vincent Voss and Andreas Roos, Andreas the head of BMW M Motorsport, they're both at Imola this weekend, and they are tuned in. I would be very surprised if they're not having some kind of watch party in their hospitality at the track, which is right on the Pit Eden end of things. And tomorrow, along with some of the Cadillac representatives who are with Hertz, Cadillac Team Joker, of course, this weekend. We've mentioned autoracing already, who were split across a couple of championships as well this weekend. Sadly, no Penske Porsche Motorsport in the paddock at Imola, which was very bizarre when I was walking around the paddock on Tuesday. I thought, I'll go and see Jonathan Dugan. Oh, no, I can't. They're not here. As we were mentioning, a potential of Kevin Estre going out on loan to Toyota. For who? Whose place would he take? But not giving up his Porsche factory driver status. Off at turn number 8, or straight on at least. Dries Vanthoor just done the fastest lap, gone straight on, finds reverse. Probably does that with the electric motor, I think, nowadays. And then gets going again, no harm, no foul, in that number 24. 10th and 11th in the first session this morning. 1st and 4th now. Actually, Marco Wittmann's just gone off at turn 1. So as we were talking about them, they've decided both to go straight on at these two most obvious places to do so. At the last part, they've almost come together actually at turn 1 as Dries is just arriving at turn 1 as Marco rejoins. It was again an early decision from Dries Vanthoor at turn 9, just about the last place on the track that you can run straight on. Oh yeah, a little lock up with the right front Michelin as well as he came in there over that bump. It looks fairly innocuous, but it's exactly where you're going down through the gearbox and putting as much pressure on the tyres to slow you down. And then Marco Wittmann doing something pretty similar down at turn 1, and they're now back together on the track. Synchronised out braking, literally at opposite ends of the track there, Ryan.
Yeah, you couldn't have organised it any better if that was what you were trying to do, and the fact that it was serendipitous probably makes it all the more remarkable. But, you know, the good news is they had both put in pretty good laps right before that. My suspicion is they were just testing to see, all right, is there a little bit more in the brake zone if I go after it? Found out the answer was no, but it was a relatively harmless refutal of that inquiry, and consequently they're able to take that lesson, file it away, and be better prepared to go for pole later on today.
Drive through once again for the Heart of Racing Valkyrie with a Ross Gunn, I think it was, who was bringing it out this time for a +6 km/h drive through, or speeding violation rather, that's cost him the drive through. Hello to Arnage Rob, who's already planning his watching and listening for tomorrow. Listening in earlier, a great coverage as always, thank you. Not sure I'm going to explain it to the boss tomorrow, but I intend to do your Fantastic Four of endurance tomorrow. Also hello to James O'Donnell, otherwise engaged watching his football club. We were talking about soccer loans with Estre earlier on. Coventry City were in action earlier on today, and they have done themselves proud. My football club is Sunderland, and we were up against Coventry at this time last year, looking for to get into the playoffs, and subsequently Sunderland got promoted back into the Premiership. Coventry City going the same way, it seems, this year from the English Football League. James, great to hear how the results have gone for you this evening, and now tuned in for us at IMSA Radio. If you want to say hello, it's BMW, Cadillac, Acura, Porsche in the top 4, and those 4 are now, with the slight improvement, separated by the huge margin of almost 0.3 of a second. In GT D, it is the 2 Lexus now at the top of the field. Frankie Montecalvo in the interloper to GTD, the 89 car, ahead of the full season entry of the number 12 car, Ben Pedersen, behind that. There's about 2.5 tenths between those two. The Lamborghini Huracan. So we have 2 different Lamborghinis here, by the way. That's worth pointing out as well, which I didn't mention earlier. So the Huracan, there's life in the old Wind Dog yet, as Trent Hinman just goes back out in that car now. He's in 3rd. From the Corvette Z06 of DXDT Racing, sporting a slightly different colour scheme this weekend. Mason Filippi taking over that car from Robert Wiggins. In 5th, it's Winwood Racing. Effectively championship leaders thereabouts this weekend because of all of the machinations around cars that aren't doing the full season. Philip Ellis behind the wheel, the 57. The top 6, Henrik Edman for Dragon Speed, also in different colours this weekend. A rather bright purple and green colour for them this weekend. That is representing their clothing, or their sponsor, who is a clothing manufacturer. And those top 6, again, separated by half a second, half a second, should I say. As once again, turn 9 has claimed another victim. No damage to Louis Delatraz in the Wayne Taylor Racing number 40 Dex imaging machine, the mostly black car. Now, Louis has got himself to the middle of the road, and now he's going through the tyre barrier. He can't find reverse, can he? This might bring out a red flag. This would be the daftest way to lose a fast lap, but I don't think he can find a red flag. Oh, excellent, he has found reverse. He's found reverse, so now he's going to come back out under the marshal's instructions onto the track at turn 9. He's right in the braking area. Ooh, now I'm not sure how that might go down with race control. We had the Aston Martin of the Heart of Racing coming down behind him. There were flags out, but that was a worrying moment on several levels there, Ryan Marine, for Louis Delatraz and for the Wayne Taylor Racing team.
It's very odd to see a car back out of one of these runoff areas and back out onto an active racetrack, and I can't imagine that he would have done that without some guidance from the quarter marshals, but very nearly that caught out his team car, and meantime, problems for Roxy, which has found a tire bundle. And that's almost certainly a red flag.
Turn 1, hasn't bailed. That is a red flag, confirmed. Harry King, multiple British Carrera Cup or Carrera Cup GP champion, has gone in and wiped some panels off the left-hand side of that car, still running the Roxy holding the Canna Mobile 1 livery. This is the 177, the bright pink dinosaur car. That's not coming out of there. That's a very, absolutely teaming into there with so much speed. And he lost that on the way in. Back end started coming around, and he's very lucky not to have had a bigger incident there, Ryan. The back end started to come around. He was taking too much speed in by the look of it. What I don't know, was that his outlap? No, it wasn't. It can't have been the end of an outlap, was it? I don't think so. He tried to bail out, but left it. I mean, it's fractionally too late. He almost got down the runoff, but the car got loose on him, and he slammed the wall into the runoff area, but with the left-hand side of the car. And that's, again, required the attendance of our AMR safety crew. And the guys get there pretty quick. When you consider that they're in Porsche Cayennes and Ford Raptors, Ford 150 Raptors, they are not short of horsepower to get, when it says rapid response on the Porsche Cayennes and the Raptors, they're not messing about, these guys. Some of the best lads and lasses in the business, absolutely enthusiastic about the sport, fully professional in what they do. And I know that they're listening as well, when and where they can. We always want them to have a really boring weekend. I think this might end the session, Ryan, don't you?
I do, because the tire barrier has been shuffled around. It might need a little bit of attention. It looks like they're having to take Harry out of the car on the passenger side because it's stuck in the tire bundle, and they've been able to get Harry out. Remember, this is the car that won here last year. Lawrence Vanthoor was part of the driving lineup, having won the first 2 races of the season in GTP. They drafted him in this one-off entry in GTD, and he came in, he won the race. This weekend, Harry King gets the call alongside the Dane Mikkel Peterson, who's making his IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship debut, having quite a bit of experience in the World Endurance Championship, Asian Le Mans, some SRO racing in Europe, but they're going to have to come from presumably toward the back because they will lose the fast lap in qualifying. And John, your supposition was correct. Checkered flag is out.
Yeah, they're lifting that car. They have all of the cars here in IMSA have 2 lift points that are on the balance point of the car, on the roof of the car, fastened to the FIA approved safety cage. And there's a bit of equipment that you can loop on to any crane hook, and then you put the straps onto that, and that lifts the car, and that's what they're doing at the moment. Let's give you a VP rundown then. Let's start in the top of the field with GTP. That time from BMW team WRT, and Sheldon von der Linde in the car at the end as well. Despite a little run on, it is the 1:12.284. That's the best time we've seen so far. All of half a tenth of a second ahead of the Whelen Cadillac in second, with a 1:12.284 to 1:12.330. Then the best of the Acuras is Nick Yellerly, new colours for the 93 this weekend. Another tenth and a half further back. He's about a tenth ahead of the best of the Porsches, which is Lawrence Vanthoor. That was the Kevin Estre time.